Hello, my lovelies. So today I thought I'd do something a little different, a little get ready with me while telling the story of why I love the horror genre so much. As many of you might know who's checked out my channel, I like a lot of creepypasta based channels like Mr. Creepypasta, Creepsmithpasta, Creepypasta Jr. and stuff like that. And I would like to give a little bit of insight as to why I'm such a horror fan and how that ties into my personality. So first we're going to bear with me. That's so refreshing. So when I was really young, I'd say about 5 years old, I got introduced to the horror community, which at the time was not actually a community. It was just, you know, my mother loved horror films. So the first horror film I actually watched, a movie when I was about 5 years old, was Child's Play. That's the one with Chucky, the talking doll, and Andy, his child owner, who was misfortunate enough to get him as a gift, if I remember right. It's been a while since I watched the original. I know they did a remake, and I watched it, and I know a lot of people didn't like it, but honestly, I did. But I'm taking the unpopular opinion here. Now, most children at that age would have been horrified. I was mesmerized. And I guess, in a way, hooked from day one. Literally, day one. Because I remember asking to watch it again the next day. My mother had rented it. Yeah, you know, this has been a while ago. And I remember it was on a Friday because I was allowed to stay up late. And she had her cousin over. And we were watching movies. We were having pizza. And she let me stay in there while they watched this movie. Which, now in hindsight, I would never do with my 5-year-old. But, you know, it was a different time back then. Still not appropriate, but, you know, it happened. And the next day was Saturday, which meant no school. And because I was in, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I had no school back then. I was not in kindergarten yet. So it wouldn't have been any school anyway. But for my parents, that meant no work on Saturdays. My mother worked in a plant factory where they, like a plant nursery, where they grew plants and shipped them out to stores and whatnot. So for her, Saturday was no work. Now, I was hooked. After that, we started watching this old television show called Tales from the Crypt, in which you got to watch short segments of different horror stories, suspense, thrillers, stuff like that. Outer Limits, and what was the other one? The Twilight Zone. We would stay up late every night and watch these. Now, of course, I started school the following year. I started kindergarten. And so that meant earlier bedtimes, earlier mornings. But every Friday and Saturday, we would still watch what we could, which was usually Tales from the Crypt and Outer Limits, or Twilight Zone, whichever one came on that night. And I was just so hooked on these shows. I loved them probably more than any child should. And I remember I never had nightmares. I was not the type of child who had night terrors back then. So in my mother's eyes back then, there was nothing wrong. As long as it wasn't affecting my sleep and I was doing fine, there was no reason to stop this. Sorry, give me a moment. Lost my concealer. Well, it carried on until I started school. And during that time, my mother became highly religious. And her friends convinced her that it was a bad idea for me to be watching these shows and that she was actually being a negative influence on my life. So she decided that not only would I not partake in that anymore, but she wouldn't either. But it was too late. I was already stubborn for somebody so young, and I had cousins. So, you know where this is going. During the weekend, I would go to my cousin's house and we would watch scary movies because her mom worked during the weekend. So she just didn't care. By the time then, I was about 7. Yeah, a little young to be left unsupervised. I'm not going to say she left us completely unsupervised, but she would be on the couch. We would be on the floor watching TV, usually with like blankets and pillows and stuffed animals, and she would fall asleep on the couch, even though she told my mom that she was awake the whole time. She was not. And we would watch these horror movies and stuff. And what was funnier to me at the time is that she would go and let us rent movies. And she would just give us the money and her card, because you had to have a card back then for Blockbuster. And they would scan it, and we were allowed to choose whatever we wanted as long as it wasn't like, anything dirty, as she said. No dirty movies, she would say. And not that we knew that what that was. We really didn't, It was really poor, guardianship there, parenting. And so we would go and we would get, kid movies that we want to see, childlike movies, Disney. But then we would go into the horror area and we would get movies that we wanted to see too. And of course, the attendant or cashier or whatever you want to call them would ask, "Who are these movies for?" And my cousin would always answer, "It's for my mama. She's sick and can't walk, so we come in here and get her movies." And they would just be like, "Yeah, that sounds believable." They didn't question it once. So, yeah. I remember one of the biggest movies I saw with her was It, the original Stephen King adaptation. It was actually a television show, a 2-parter series. The old one. And I watched that with her. And loved it. She was terrified. I was in love. So that kind of love for all things horror related followed me until, I don't know, 11 years of age. That sounds about right. And we actually relocated. It had nothing to do with that. We relocated for different reasons. Mostly to do with my dad's job to another state. And the state that we went to wasn't really welcoming of little weirdo girls who loved horror. So I got picked on a lot for this. For my love of horror and just the way I liked to dress. I didn't dress like the locals. I wore a lot of black and red and deep shades of purple and blue and just very dark. I wasn't goth. Or maybe I was, I don't know, because, by the time I was 12, I was coloring my hair dark and wore a lot of dark shades and loved a lot of horror. And people just didn't understand that. They just thought I was really strange to be so young, in their words, and so much in love with scary things. So, like I said, I got made fun of a lot. And eventually, I left public school because of it. Because it didn't do any good to go to the teachers or the principal, because, believe it or not, they take the side of the bullies every time. It didn't matter what happened. If they stolen stuff from me, made fun of me, shoved me down the stairs, it didn't matter. I was always to blame. I was the weirdo who didn't fit in, and they'd always tell me, well, if you tried a little harder, if you dressed a little different, if you acted a little better, people would like you. So basically, if you change yourself, people will accept you for who you are. And I couldn't accept that. Like, that was not the way I was raised. I was raised to accept all people, no matter what. Speech impediments, disabilities, different likes. I was taught to be open-minded and accept them for who they were. And then I came to this town that was very closed-minded, and, they just weren't taught that. So I couldn't accept it, and I left school and started homeschooling, where I could indulge more into my likes and be more of myself. During that time, I got in with a ministry group and began to travel. Now, this might seem really strange to you. Why would I get into a ministry group when obviously that was not my sort of setting? Well, I'll tell you right now, it was not really my choice. My parents had a huge hand in that, and I was lied to. I was basically told it was just a chance to see the world and see different cultures. And, I thought, wow, I'm going to get to see all these people, and maybe I'll find somewhere where I will fit in and feel like I belong. It didn't work out that way. Now, don't get me wrong. I got to see all different kinds of cultures, and I did find people who kind of connected with me and liked me, but they were not people in my group. The people in my group hated me. They thought I was a witch. They hated me. Now, you may say, Miss Lucid, are you serious? They actually called you a witch? Yes. These people were very sheltered and very backwards. And yes, I was accused of being a witch because of my likes. But the locals, I actually connected more with them because, I was very open to their ways. I didn't criticize them. And I just, got along with the people. I'm not going to say that they understood me, but they accepted me. And that's what was important in my eyes back then. So I traveled for a while. Now, skipping unnecessary details and going way, 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 way ahead, in 2004, I met what was going to be my husband, and he was my best friend for the longest time. In 2006, we had our child. In 2007, we were married. In 2009, we had our daughter. He never accepted me. It was just, I don't know, I guess he would say what he thought I wanted to hear. But once we got into a relationship, he found out that he didn't want the weirdo who was still in love with Pennywise and Freddy Krueger and Chucky and oh my. His family didn't like me. Now, I was a great parent, and I would never let my children see these things that I was in love with. I kept this all behind closed doors. My children never saw it. You know, family nights consisted of Disney and Pixar and all that stuff. Singing, talking cars, and stuff like that. You know what I'm referring to. The horror stuff was when they were gone to daycare, my time off of work, personal time. When they were asleep, I'd pop in a movie. This was all me time, but he couldn't accept that, and neither could his parents. So, long story made short, he started being abusive to me and treating me like poo, and we got divorced in 2012. Now, in 2012, after the divorce, my horror fascination really amped up. Of course, again, behind closed doors, away from my children, and I became interested in all things horror. And that continued on until after I got married in 2016. I got remarried. I met my future husband in 2013, took my time. We got married in 2016. We had our third child, the youngest, in 2017, which is the one I fondly call Baby Lucid. And during 2018, I discovered Mr. Creepypasta and Creeps McPasta. And I felt like I had just found everything that would make my life perfect. It was like complete. I'm going super dark with this pigment today because of the blouse I'm wearing. But again, I'm not worried about any kind of fallout or anything because I'm going to clean up. Now, since then, my oldest has picked up a love in horror, but I still carefully monitor because I don't want it to become an unhealthy obsession like it did for me for a couple of years. But I still like all things horror related. It's just at a healthier pace. And when you look at my channel, you're going to see a lot of Mr. Creepypasta, Mr. Creeps McPasta, Creepypasta Jr. Because the fact of the matter is, the love's still there and very strong. But I monitor it very carefully around my children because I don't want to influence them in a negative way. My son's just starting to show a love for it. This does go into gaming. I do love playing horror games, and he's just starting to pick up a few, but we're very careful because if you know, a lot of horror games have a lot of language, and we are not for that. Strong language. So we monitor what he plays very carefully. He loves the game Granny. Any of you who know that, you know what I'm talking about. He loves that game. I think he plays it every day after school, after his homework's done. So, no problems there. He's not showing an unhealthy, sort of obsession with it like I did for a couple years. As for me, I have seriously toned down what I like, but the love is still there. It's probably never going to go away because it's been such a huge part of my life, and I just don't see it going away. What about you? Leave a comment below. How do you feel about horror genre? Like it, love it, and not really for you? Now, one thing my children did get into, and that's the older two, that would be my daughter and my oldest son, back when it was in its heyday, was FNAF. And I was totally okay with that. Anything they watched, I monitored first, and they did play the games. I've noticed in the past year, they're kind of dying down. They did get, my oldest son got into Hello Neighbor. So what's it called? Hello Neighbor? Again, I monitored it, and I was totally fine with it. And that's pretty much about it. I know he keeps saying that he wishes they would come out with a movie. And honestly, so would I. I mean, excuse me a minute. Where did he go? Don't you hate it when you have something and you lose it and you can't find it? And you need it right that moment? Oh, I just found it. I did want to make mention that I'm using a new eyeliner. It's a auto eyeliner. I've never used one before. So if I mess up, just bear with me. This color is in black. And I found one in a different color. I'm not bold enough to try one yet, considering I love how smooth that is. Considering I haven't tried this one yet, but considering how smooth it is, yeah, I'm gonna go back and get some. I'm going for a kind of chunkier look again. Oh, that's so smooth. Oh my goodness, look at that. Perfectly smooth. I love this. This is so much easier than using a pencil. Oh. Like I said, I'm not perfect. Far from it. And a lot of these makeup hacks and tricks, I'm just discovering. I didn't wear a lot of makeup, obviously, back in the day. So I've learned a lot from like Lily Jean's channel, and I'm still learning. And I know some people may say, you're too old to still be learning, but you can always teach an old dog new tricks. I hope that I never become so closed-minded that I can't learn something new, because when that happens, I don't know. I don't know what to do with myself. I literally would not know what to do with myself if I became so closed-minded that I couldn't learn anything new. You know what? I thought I got everything together before I started this. And now I'm starting to learn how ill prepared I actually was. And it's quite embarrassing. But everybody who knows me knows I'm a little scatterbrained. Excuse me. So, seeing that I'm always scatterbrained probably is not a huge surprise for any of you. Yes, I do. I still do silly stuff when I put on my makeup. You don't have to point that out. wiggle that through. As I was saying the other day, I got my wig in and I'm so excited. What I'm wanting to do is do a what would Miss Lucid Dreams look like personified sort of look. If you saw the picture on my Instagram and Twitter, you'll see that the wig is very much vibrant and colorful and beautiful with purples, grays, blacks, very out there. Not your typical, what I would call your typical wig. So I'm very excited about doing that. I'm going to do a video on that. I know this video is running a little bit long and I'm sorry for that. I was just super excited about doing this video. And now for the lips. Now, I've had some people ask me, how does the horror genre affect my anxiety and depression? And honestly, I find it soothing. I know some people find it very anxiety-inducing, but for me, it's the opposite effect. Odd, right? Comment below if you've experienced something like that. Something that usually induces, you know, anxiety and panic in others is actually calming to you. Let me know. I'm interested in seeing your responses. Now I'm going to go over this with some darker pigment. Very shimmery and pretty. And then I'm going to go over that with this other Fruit Punch by Wet n Wild. Very fun color. Oh, it smells so good. I used to be afraid that I was the only one who smelled their makeup. But I recently found out that that is not the case. Alright? I feel like I'm missing something, but I like the look. Very pigmented color. Very bright. I'm going to take some pictures because this lighting in here does not do me any favors, and I haven't got my blouse on, so this is not the finishing look. But I do want to clean that up a little bit. So I'm going to clean up a little bit where I made some oopsies, and then I'm going to finish off the look and take my pictures. I hope you're all having a beautiful day. I love you all. Bye-bye.